What's good, YouTube? It's the Baker. So instead of doing like a very traditional build video like has always been done since the beginning of the ethos, I'm gonna try something maybe a little different this time. I more want to kind of follow on how I started off the Foley run, or the Foley video, of more talking about more of the run than anything else. The builds will still be displayed and showcased throughout it, but the centerpiece isn't going to so much be on the run itself or the build itself, but more what I encountered throughout the run. And mainly I'm doing this so that people, more or less, no matter your skill bracket, can benefit from the video. If you know a build, all you gotta do is see a build and you can leave and you know exactly what's going on. But to understand what actually happens in the run is something that's far more unique to the individual player, and no matter really the skill level, lessons can be learned from it. A few things you're gonna have to encounter along the way that are gonna be a little annoying is when you get the speed up time naturally that occurs at around 72 hours, your thrax frequency is going to go through the roof. It gets your survival starts to feel more like a void cascade in one position, which I didn't so much as not enjoy, but it was definitely a huge change of pace. Huge change of pace that I kind of wish I would have planned for a little bit better, because I didn't expect for it to get as hectic as it did. The part that really sucks about it, though, is that it'll lead to less acolytes per hour for you. And most likely your acolytes are going to start lining up far more frequently with your thrax, making it a much harder situation to actively deal with. The spores, though, I feel with the build, if I was better going into it, I would have adjusted my build a bit more, only due to the fact that I had a lot of issues with spores keeping them up. I really wanted to keep 100k, but due to the fact that I only had 100% range, it made it very, very hard to do that unless you wanted to be absurdly active the whole time. Though I will say, with the amount of times I went down, Undying Will was extremely, extremely helpful to have. Though there is a world where if I was paying probably better attention, or even if I had the Augur Secrets and Augur Reach, I might be able to have the shield regen to have not needed Undying Will, because I probably would have just not gone down really at all. That's, though, more down to you as an individual person and how good you are. If you do end up switching out to that, I would take out the Undying Will and Blind Rage, and then you just put in the Augur Reach and Augur Secrets into those two spots. And then this will give you 130% more, or 130% range, which brings you up to a 20.8 meter spread radius instead of a 16 meter. So that should help you a good amount. You are going to have less power strength, which is going to make your shock, toxic lash, and your venom dose give less actual elemental status. But in a way, this can help you, only due to the fact that it'll change your weighting in cold for your Sentinel, allowing you to have more active cold going out, which does give you crit damage, so it will help your overall damage on top of also giving you a nice CC. For Molt, honestly, is just a godsend. It clears status for you. I had someone ask whether Decoy or Molt was better. I have to lean towards Molt only because, as far as I know, Decoy doesn't clear statuses. I could be wrong on that. I haven't used Decoy in ages. But overall, I absolutely loved having Molt. This would be the best way to regen your shield overall, because it also provides a nice distraction. Just make sure you get away from it, you know? Make sure you get away from it. The best thing I can always recommend is you Molt, and then you run forward for a few steps. As soon as you feel the speed increase start, you can roll, And rolling will increase your avoidance, so it makes you just innately harder to hit, but it'll also then extend the distance out at which you roll, which will make it a lot easier to get yourself out of hairy situations when you're trying to just molt to get out of there, if you will. If you're trying to just stay in there and regen your shield, of course, don't worry about that. Just molt and then try to move away from it a little bit, but I wouldn't recommend trying to go too far away from it because, you know, you only have so much range at the end of the day. If you do put in the auger reach, you'll go from 10 meters to 13 meters, so it's really nothing to write home about. And that's why I recommend predominantly just use this as a form of being able to regen your shield and have, depending on the room that you choose, it'll also help a little bit with distractionary measures and all of that. You can use it against acolytes as well, and they will attack that instead of you, which is very nice for when you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed. At higher levels, one thing I would commonly do against Misery Acolyte, the Misery Acolyte, is when he would summon his shadows and I wasn't able to immediately kill the violence or kill the violence within a lockdown stun, or I wasn't in a position to be able to reliably do a full duration lockdown on him, I would roll away from them and actually put a Molt down and then allow them to come closer to me. And then this way you have that distractionary unit down while you're dealing with the silence from the violence. And this will give you the ability to just survive a little bit better during those kind of very awkward situations where you're not able to have any of your weapon platform buffs up, because that's essentially what this entire loadout is it's 3 weapon platform buffs. And when you can't have them up, you're still going to do okay damage, but it's definitely not great damage. So essentially you just use it as a way to bind your time, regen your shield, and cause a distractionary means. Especially because the shadows, they aren't affected by any real CC at all, besides actually stunning them in some type of facet. So you can't put any of the cold from your Sentinel on them. They don't get radiation, but they do seem to attack mobs with radiation. So you have a little bit of a CC with that, but it's a very, you really have to kind of create that to happen. There's a lot of forcing that goes into it, and you can't really reliably do it without also putting yourself into a kind of a bad situation. One of the best ways to do it is to make sure that they damage the enemies, meaning the shadows themselves. So if the violence does his silence, if they will also get affected by that silence because they have radiation on them. And that will cause all the aggro to switch over to the Acolyte. Now, they don't really kill them terribly fast later on, but early on they can do some decent damage to them. But it's like as always, I like to say, it's nothing really to write home about, but more it's just a form of distractionary tool for you. One thing to note, if you are using Blind Rage when you are Molt spamming, if you will, you're going to really want to be attentive to your shield and make sure you don't overspam Molt, only due to the fact that the energy cost on it is relatively high, and you're going to get under 10 total cast. So you're really going to have to pick and choose on that. And one of the reasons why I say to pay attention to your shield and everything a lot with it is because you'll get Angus procs to happen, and when those happen you won't really have to worry about molting as much, except maybe if you get like a status effect on you. And of course, when you're running a Dante Spectre, do your best to make sure that you have his buff up for overguard whenever you actually do go out there. The Toxic Lash, of course, is phenomenal just to have, especially as a melee main where it gets doubled in its actual effectiveness. And having the armor strip via the spores and venom dose in combination with the corrosive Archon shards, it really sent it to a beautiful, beautiful place. and made me very glad that I decided to mod for viral on my dual ichor, and this was mainly due to the fact that the viral stacks will carry over for Thrax spectral form, giving you that additional damage into them. I did at one time try gas, and gas works better for killing everything else, besides of course the Thrax and spectral form, but the issue with gas is it causes a lot of FPS drops, and the dual ichors already cause FPS drops due to the toxin pools that they spawn during incarnate form. So you're adding a lot of variables to your actual FPS that I would not really recommend whatsoever. This goes the same thing for using Momentous Bond on your Sentinel. I do not recommend using that. I had to extract because of both of those reasons on a run with saryn. One was because I had gas on my melee weapon and was also using Momentous Bond, and then I took gas off of my melee weapon. Thought maybe the few instances and chances of getting gas really wouldn't make that big of a difference with Momentous Bond, but still ended up having some pretty severe FPS drops. So I highly advise not using gas or Momentous Bond, or essentially anything that gives you gas. If you want better performance overall, you will want to use a different melee weapon over dual ichor. I have no clue what you'll use. It's up to you. I still have to do more further research. I'm just getting back into being melee, more or less. I've spent like the past 6 months or so relearning melee, since being a melee main from 1.99 was my last time being a melee main. For anyone that knows when that was for melee 1.99, yeah, it was a very long time ago. We're talking like 6 years ago now. So can't exactly help you on alternatives on things. I'm just kind of relearning the game as I go right now. Shock, you may ask me why do I use that and not use influence? It just kind of goes, you would think, hand in hand. But electric, honestly, is just a phenomenal status. It does great damage, it stacks unlimitedly, and it also is CC and has minor AoE. It's pretty much everything you want. So if you can have armor stripping to come into play with having electric, you really just send it to the moon on such a great level. Any type of armor reduction or anything. That's even why before I was playing saryn, I would still use like Shattering Impact and such, because it was a passive way to get armor stripping to happen while also not having to mod directly for corrosive. It is slower than corrosive depending on the mob, I will say, because what it does is it takes off the base armor every single time. So every mob has a different calculation on how many hits. Acolytes, it's only 4 hits, which is the predominant reason why I use it. But essentially, the longer you take to kill a mob, the more damage you end up doing to them when it comes to using Shattering Impact. So having electric combined in with that, it just innately keeps the damage going higher and higher with it, and it makes just for a phenomenal situation. Also, you're able to give that buff to your Sentinel, and your Sentinel now has that exact same AoE CC damage as well. When it comes to swapping out mods that I was referring to earlier with Augur, there is also, if you're good enough with just being active on clicking your abilities and keeping your shield gating up, you don't need fast deflection or vigor, and instead you could do Augur Reach and Augur Secrets there, and then this way you can still hold on to Undying Will if you wanted, and also, of course, you get to keep Blind Rage. So there is that in a world for you also, and it all just depends off of your reaction time, of course. I use the other 2 mods literally because of reaction time. Sometimes mine's Mine's a bit off. So it helps make up for that entire thing. If you don't want Undying Will, like at all, of course, you could just do more range or power strength if you want, of course. Something along those lines. And you'll be good to go. I mean, those are about the real alternatives I could think on making the build different, but also it's kind of more or less the same. As I've said many times in the one commentary stream, Warframe's fairly cookie cutter and things. You have a selection of mods, and really it's based off of your skill more than it is the Warframe. If you don't have Prime Sure-Footed, you still can get knockdown immunity, but you will have to sacrifice, I would have to say, Undying Will. You honestly, if you don't have Prime Sure-Footed yet, you're not going to be doing content high enough to where Undying Will. You're not going to be sitting in a mission long enough to where it'll matter. You can still get level cap, but Undying Will is made for those types of situations where you're on like day 5 of going in, you're starting to get mentally really drained and stuff like that. You know, you're struggling on yourself. You look like the mod itself. When it comes down to Arcanes, I know I didn't really go into that, but that's going to be more based on you and what you want to do. You could do an Energize if you wanted, which would help you be able to cast more frequently for your Molt and all of that, especially if you're using Blind Rage. Or you could use Fury just for more extra base damage. You can go with Strike. Arcane Strike is probably one of the biggest ones I would recommend. The extra attack speed would be absolutely huge for you. But yeah, there's a whole different host of things. It's all just going to be based off of you and what you enjoy doing. What I would do, I guess, if I was to swap this out, I would go with Strike, but that's just because of how I play. I'd be Strike or Fury. Probably Strike, just because the attack speed equals mobility when it comes to being a melee main, because generally you're going to be attacking while moving, and your how quickly you move while you're attacking as melee is based off of how quickly you attack. So you can get yourself a little bit extra movement speed by increasing your attack speed. And especially because if you don't have the Riven as well, you're going to lose that attack speed. This also still makes it so you could use Gladiator's Vice in change of the Riven if you don't have that. And then the extra crit from Gladiator's Vice will make it so that you still stay under 100% but gain 30% attack speed. Since we are here at the Dual Ichor anyways, go ahead and give a quick little talk about it. I used Melee Duplicate just to further bypass damage attenuation. It was the same reason why I only wanted to go with the yellow crits. The higher your damage is, the more it gets damage attenuated, but the more instances of separate damage you have, those all have their own instances of damage attenuation. I really loved using Discipline's Merit over any of the other mods that I was using when it came to Tennokai, oddly enough. I used to use Dreamer's Wrath a lot, and the damage increase is absolutely phenomenal, don't get me wrong. But I find that having consistency, at least for me, works significantly better to have overall. You also could do Conditions Perfection if you wanted as well. But once again, that lines into the same lines as Dreamer's Wrath, where I feel consistency is much better. One of the few problems that I did have, and I don't know exactly what I want to do with it going forward, is in the Evolution 2, there's the extra range and then the extra heavy windup. Part of me almost wants to go with the extra range due to the fact that when Thrax like to go up in the air and float while they're actually still in their normal form, they become relatively hard to hit, and I had to keep doing like a jump attack in order to kill them and everything, which was just a bit awkward. It was doable and everything, and they died relatively quick, but I don't know if the extra range would have made the difference. So something little just to kind of note if you want to test for yourself going forward. As for Dual Toxis, I don't really have much to comment too much with. It was just used mainly for when I was down so that I could kill Eximus quicker and be able to proc energizing shot. Really outside of that, it didn't have too much of a use. I didn't like it against acolytes at all. Normal mobs actually was pretty good, but I'm a potato at the end of the day, and I'm not good at aiming. So recharging it always became a little bit of a hassle for me, especially due to the fact that I don't have any recoil control because I have energizing shot on there. You can use it as a way to keep your, what's it called, up a little bit easier overguard, but I wouldn't exactly say it's the best overall use for that. Mainly I used it for the extra damage multiplier onto overguard, which helped me kill Eximuses quicker. The only mod that I really find like truly necessary would probably be the Augur mod, and it helps give me a very minor brief respite, which is how I was regenning my shield whenever I was like out there and everything like that. This was my brief respite. Outside of that, I mean, if you have a different build that does like really well, feel free to use it. I'm still learning the weapon, so I'm nowhere near to be able to say that like this is the perfect build. I haven't done any research into it or anything. I kind of just have been learning on my own like I usually like to. One thing you can do if you want to minimize recoil is take evolution, the second tier of evolution, and come over here to marksman hand, and you can get minus 50% there. It does help. The reason why I didn't opt into doing that and just did the other is the potato thing again, and it helps secure me with a faster reload, but also the weapon's recoil is fairly close to that of the Vandal, and I forget what it was called in Counter-Strike, but the AK in Counter-Strike. So I have a fair bit of hours in there. I have a couple thousand altogether between both of them over the years, and picking up on its recoil pattern felt the same as that, so it really wasn't too bad for me. And the only problems I really just suffered from was my innate potatoism that I always had no matter what, even if the weapon has no recoil. Moving on to the Sentinel that I used, I want to start off with Virgilus. I did have Hush on him, but he died so many times, I'm not 100% if that was actually needed. Sometimes it feels like it wasn't, but I think it was mainly just a lot of incidental damage that killed him. I don't know how much aggro he really actually drew himself. I know they die faster without Hush, but nonetheless. You can also try and do rim rounds, which will increase the probability of you getting cold. It'll bring it up to the highest status before you add in your weapon platform buffs. So that'll help a lot, and it'll also bring you up to like just under 130% status. You can try something with that if you feel like you really don't need that or not, and you don't care to use it. When it came to Nautilus, I did like Nautilus overall, though one big problem I had with the gathering effect is when I was just trying to stand there for a moment and rest my hands or something like that, or even fighting an acolyte sometimes and everything, his pull-in would end up causing more problems than it did good. So it's something to kind of keep an eye out for. Overall, though, when it comes down to intensity on your hands, Nautilus works the best as a set or as a companion, because you don't have to go running around as much to actually effectively get kills. The mobs actually come to you better. So depending on how active you want to be and all of that, you feel free to, of course, use other companions and everything like that. Sacrifice was phenomenal to have because I'm not the greatest player. I'm still getting better. Do note, if you aren't choosing a Sentinel for your companion and you do lose Guardian, that's just another survivability tool on keeping you alive. Because essentially that's more or less a brief respite for free, and with Manifold Bond you can consistently just kind of keep that thing going. I wouldn't say it's something to rely off of in regards of choosing to wait for that or try to make that proccing over using your shield gating abilities, you know, through augur mods and such. But just having it as a passive way to stay alive for when you may miss something, you know, it can really help you with that overall. And I know that's one of the big things it helped me with. If you find you don't need it, I would probably say use accelerated deflection just to keep your Sentinel alive longer. That, or you can do duplex bond and you'll have better CC throughout everything, and you should theoretically also get better spore coverage. The only real note that I need to make on the plasma, or obviously the Riven, would be the most thing to actually note. If you don't have a Riven, honestly, I probably recommend fire rate, if anything. Do like a vigilante fever in there. The fire rate, the reason why I would specify into that is it helps not only with just how fast you shoot, but when you have the hold the fire enabled, it will also help you to enable your reload faster, because your fire rate determines when the reload gets triggered. So with this being a slower shooting weapon, the fire rate definitely will help on that end. And I do know you have the reload holster through your Sentinel with synth deconstruct, but when you're actually just using the weapon and you don't want to switch and stuff, that would be my alternative to that. If you don't mind switching, of course, you could probably just throw in an armaments and give yourself some more multi-shot. You could do vicious spread even, and this just gives you essentially a little bit more area of effect, because Plasmor has infinite punch through, so the only thing really stopping you is the distance at which it travels and the radius at which it can cover width-wise while it's traveling lengthwise. So you can increase the width while having acceleration to increase the length. Outside of that, I mean, really, if you have something that you prefer, you know, you can do cleanse mods if you want as well. That's huge, of course, for damage output and everything. So if you want to do a cleanse mod, you can do that instead. Those are about the options that I would really recommend, more or less. There's probably some others that I'm stupid and I don't know of or something, you know. Use what you feel like you enjoy using at the end of the day. Those are just kind of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. As for focus school, the biggest reason why I chose this focus school was to have extra damage onto Thrax, because I do suffer with them a lot. They're kind of my big contention point in learning right now, where I'm really trying to get over. Since I've learned Acolytes as well as I have with this last run, this is my new area of figuring out, essentially. And that is because of course, of the Void Strike and such. Void Strike, it just makes it so easy to trigger your Arcanes and all of that. I was having issues with trying to line up Thrax kills correctly sometimes, because sometimes you'll get ones that go into their beam form, if you will, and then another one will stay solid. And what I kind of learned to do over time with that to make that work well for me was I would immediately kill the one that wasn't in that form, and then I would use a contamination wave to try and get a kill on them. And as soon as the other one would come out, I would kill him and then pop Void Strike to try to get a kill on both of them. It still makes it a little awkward, but it was the best way that I found to work with it. I've tried, you can also, if you're really good at staying alive and everything and it's not too much of a problem for you, you can try just not killing anything until they're both in a fully active form, and they're not going to go into an untargetable form unless you kill them. And then this way you can have both kills line up at one time, just due to the pure amount of dot damage that exists in this build. Both of those do work, but it's going to depend on you as a person on what's going to make you feel more comfortable. And of course, if you want the extra power strength for any of your abilities, you can feel free to go ahead and do that. I had it there as a very last resort thing if I felt like my damage was falling off too much, but I didn't find a need to use it whatsoever. But if you use any of the other builds that we've talked about with Saryn, this is a way to make up for that power strength that you're going to be losing, or you could be losing. And as well, if you're very desperate when it comes to killing Thrax and suffering with them, you can also utilize Last Grasp to net you in a little bit faster kills. There were more than a handful of times that I actually chose to go down and kill one of the Thrax first, and then go and kill the other one with Void Strike because it was easier than trying to get a contamination wave kill off. So my basis on focus trees is if you don't have issues killing Thrax with whatever other focus tree you may be using, feel free to use whatever makes you feel comfortable at the end of the day. But this was my main reasoning for running Matarai in itself. Amp Arcanes, I'm pretty stupid on. I just kind of did some research on things, and this is what I found to be meta. I don't know if it actually is or not, but this is what, it's been working well for me, is what I'll say. The emergent savior, though, that has been, I'm so happy I found that. Having that extra time to kill Thrax is honestly priceless. It really, really is, especially when you're at level cap. Lockdown, I kind of wish I would have used more, but I really didn't use it a lot. When I did use it, I felt it, and it felt really good, but I really feel like I underutilized it this whole time. I don't know if how good my amp is in relation to like other amps out there. Just for me, it's comfortable and it works-ish, I should say, of course. I like the secondary fire. I use the 3, the numbers you actually see are the numbers that you would use to build it, are 137. This was my very old Eidolon amp, and I even used to use this back when we only had a 133, like a 3 available for the highest. So I used to use a 133 at one time as well. And I like the 3 because it's a shotgun it's more or less like a plasmor. It's like a small Arca plasmor is the easiest way to describe the 3. It's really, really nice. And as you can see, it has nice crit chance. So it just works really, really well. It doesn't have really good range at all. That's kind of one of the big problems that it has, is it just doesn't have the greatest range. But that really isn't too much of an issue because you can get close to Thrax most of the time. And if you're having issues with actual range and everything, you do have the primary, which is a sniper rifle, more or less. Would be, I guess, the easiest way to describe it. So you have a very long range one with pinpoint accuracy, and then up close you have a nice spread. It doesn't require you to have any unique timing like you would with the other ones that do have spread. What I predominantly use it for is the 3, as you'll see throughout the run. And that's mainly just because I am a potato, but if you are really good at shooting, the 1 can pretty much always guarantee a one-shot, especially a headshot with it. And all you need to do is a contamination wave at very most. You don't even need to really void strike it. I was wishing my Dante Spectre was going to be of more use. But the main thing that he really just did was provide me with Overguard. The one thing I didn't know about Dante as a Spectre, at least, is for him to actually use his birds, which is page flight. He has to be getting attacked in some way, so he has to be hit by an AoE, or like a violent silence, or just direct attacks in general, which with how squishy he is, I really hate. So I didn't get the extra vulnerability to status damage that I was getting before, which honestly was really, really, really nice to have. And I didn't get the distractionary things through the birds. So the only thing that I really got through him was his Triumph, which of course is really, really nice to have. But yeah, I really like also using for page flight because the additional status vulnerability is absolutely huge. just it has a huge trade-off to where you're going to have to be replacing your Spectre a fair bit, as you don't have many ways to mitigate the amount of damage they take, and they do need some form of damage mitigation, as the overshield is going to be one shot no matter what with its 15,000 cap. It's one of the reasons why I like using silenced weapons on them, is so that they don't draw as much attention, so that's why you see the setup that you do see me run with it. As for other kinds of tips and everything that I could really give, when killing Thrax and Acolytes at the same time, I would recommend getting the Thrax into spectral form and then killing an Acolyte. And this will make sense only because from what I have noticed, the reason why I didn't have any bugged Thrax in that run, ones that weren't targetable but still draining the O2, was because when you're using a heavy attack, it knocks enemies down. Now, what I'm gathering at this point is when an enemy is in a stunned state and they die and they carry over their buffs, maybe the buff of the stun is carrying over and they never get unstunned, because the only thing that's caused it is knocking enemies down or putting them into a state to where they aren't capable of activating something, which I found very interesting. So if the stun ended before, or I just straight one-shot them, then they never got stunned. Or if I use something that, or not stunned, but they didn't get bugged. And if I just used my auto attacks as I did with most of the Thrax kills there, I had no issues of bug Thrax. So that's one of the big tips that I can give. And what this allows you to do when you kill the Thrax first and have them already in a active spectral form, you can openly heavy attack anything you need to heavy attack on the field, i.e. the Acolyte, and not worry about maybe accidentally bugging the Thrax, because it's honestly, it's a kind of a roll of the dice from what I can see. And the fact that I was able to figure out a way to consistently not bug Thrax now for a total of probably about 170 to 180 hours between all my runs, I'm pretty confident in that I have found what causes them to be bugged. So I don't know, DE, if you're listening this far in, look into making sure stuns and stuff like that get cleared, and maybe that'll fix the problem. But until then, us players, avoid stunning them, knocking them down, especially knocking them down from what I've noticed. Try to avoid doing that, and you'll have a much higher likelihood, is what I want to say, because I don't foolproof that that's the 100% always the fix, but you'll have a much higher probability of not bugging Thraxes off of my personal experience of close to 200 hours of not bugging Thrax, and having a run before where I had 5 in total bugged, and many others before that with just anywhere from 1 to 3 of them bugged. When looking back at my footage of all of them, heavy attacks were pretty much always the attack to kill them when they would bug. Be sure, if you haven't already, to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, the little bell for notifications. Memberships start at $1, and I am trying to make a full-time push, so all support is greatly appreciated. And as always, I do hope you all take care, stay safe, stay humble, be open, and as always, never stop searching. Peace, everybody.